Hello, and welcome to the yet to be named plant-based vegan talk show. I'm Scott Nixon. I'm the co-founder of Happy Herbivore and Meal Mentor. So today I'm going to kind of give you a little overview of the show and why we're trying to do this, and kind of lay out the format. So we want to create basically a vegan plant-based talk show talking about lifestyle, health, diet, recipes, food. We don't necessarily want to make it about other things outside of that are kind of in that vegan category, but we want to definitely be much more plant-based here. Each week, my intention is to invite a new guest on from the plant-based world, and we'll interview them, and we'll take questions and just talk about all the great, cool stuff that are going on. So the topics this week are going to be, is a vegan keto diet possible? And this second topic is really kind of funny to me. So it's going vegan is the new men's midlife crisis. And I actually just turned 40, so this is going to be an interesting thing to discuss. And topic 3, we're going to talk about, should we tax meat? Interesting. If you're enjoying this show as we go along, I encourage you to like or love, or if you're interested in today's or excited by today's topics, please go ahead and give us a thumbs up. Hi, Jacqueline. Thank you for the love. I appreciate it. So this show is sponsored by Meal Mentor, the company that my wife and I founded. We think it's the best family-owned vegan meal planning business on the internet. We started back in 2010. We were pretty much the first and only vegan meal plan back then. Lindsay and I started, it started off really small whenever we still lived in the Caribbean, and it has become an important part. So if you're struggling with trying to figure out what's for dinner, do you eat out more than you want to? Have you ever tried to search for recipes that are seasonal, easy to make, don't use complex ingredients? How long do you think it would take you each week to kind of do that whole process of collecting new recipes, finding something that's seasonal, finding something that's easy, what other activities could you be doing rather than planning your meals each week? I mean, you could go for a walk, you could exercise, you could talk to your spouse, you could read a book, watch a movie, spend more time with your kids, So what's your time worth, For as little as $2.48 a week, you can outsource your planning of your meals each week to Lindsay and Meal Mentor. I guarantee it will save you 1 to 3 hours each week over building your own meal plan. So thanks for enduring through my quick little advertisement. And so now let's dive into the topics. All right. So first up, the conversation here is going to be about, this one of the top, oh God, sorry, having a little trouble getting words out of my mouth. Is the vegan keto diet possible? And I will go ahead and jump right to the end and tell you, yes, it's possible, but maybe not necessary or that enjoyable. So one of the things that prompted my, discussion of this is that one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about is Plant-Based News recently published an article, and it said, the vegan keto diet, is it possible, and what are the benefits? Now, I have, if you're curious about Lindsay's own ideas, I will link up some blog posts that Lindsay has discussed very specifically around this, and I'll kind of talk about it in general. So the ketogenic diet is another variation of, say, Atkins, paleo, and they're all kind of a little different. And the core of the word keto or ketogenic diet is the idea of ketosis. And so ketosis is essentially this state that your body becomes in when you eat very little carbohydrates. And so then your body goes into fat burning mode. So that's kind of like the one paragraph explanation of it. And so, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head how few carbohydrates that would have to be every day. It's definitely way more than, it's way more difficult to do in practice, I think, than than you would expect. Basically, no sugars, no breads of any type. And you also have to stay away from highly starchy vegetables. Think potatoes, um, maybe carrots as well. But all of it, and it's going to matter by like how much you weigh as well, right? Um, and typically, what the ketogenic diet does is it loads you up on fats, proteins, um, and then you have to eat a lot of like, of course, vegetables, which is good. And so, no, we're talking about vegan ketogenic diet. So, have I ever done the vegan ketogenic diet? No. But what I have done is I've done a number of experimentation over the years. And so one of the things I've done is I've actually done water fasts. So I've done 24-hour, 36, and up to 4.5 days. And so one of the things that you can do is that when you start, in my case, I was fasting, but if you were trying to do the keto diet, you have to it takes some time. It can be anywhere from maybe 12 or 24 hours at a minimum to several days, like maybe even as much as a week, to get your body into ketosis. And what it is that you basically, it's like your liver, and obviously if you still have food in your system, your liver actually stores some of, these carbohydrates, and they're in your muscles and all of this stuff. And so it takes time for things to kind of process through. Now, so what you actually need to do is, like I said, get into ketosis. And so they actually have these like strips that allow you to test the ketones in your urine. And so you just pee on the strip, and that tells you whether you're in ketosis or not. Like if it's really low, it has to be really, really low. I think it has to be like on these like two lowest ones for you to technically be in ketosis. Now, the ketosis process is actually a fairly normal thing. I think that probably your biggest health concern that I would be asking is like, what are the long-term effects of you doing it for the long term? I think over a couple of days, a week, maybe even a month, there's probably almost no chance that there's going to be long-term effects. Now, there's the other thing, because I'm kind of making some assumptions here, like you could do the vegan ketogenic diet healthy, potentially, that means you might just eat a lot of like green leafy vegetables, and you may, maybe you're eating a lot of tofu and beans and stuff like that. And I think there's certainly a lot of challenges, so I'm going to read something right out of the article I'm kind of referencing. And it's like, for starters, some of the challenges are, can you really survive on no grains, no root vegetables, no dates, no other forms of sweeteners? So that's something that you really have to ask yourself. And for me, I've recently been, I've basically I went through a process where I took all processed grains. Actually, I took all carbohydrates out in the first week or two. So like no rice, no potatoes, no breads, no sugar of any type, no flour, any of that. And so then I ate that way for about a week. And then I transitioned for like the last 5 weeks where I was, when I introduced rice and other like starchy vegetables and potatoes back in. And so that's just kind of the closest thing to like multiple weeks of something that somewhat resembles kind of ketosis. And so in this article, they don't really tell you how to get into ketosis. They're mostly just talking about like, well, should you consider doing this? And I think a lot of people hear these things kind of going around, and it's like we look at carbohydrates and we go bad, right? And so I think even it's always been hard for me to not shake off the idea that carbohydrates are bad. And so, I think people are like starting to catch on a little bit. Like, I wonder if I could do vegan keto, because people lose a lot of weight on that. And I think the reality is this comes back to, is this sustainable? And I think for me, doing that, just that first week without carbohydrates was no rice, no potatoes was really, really difficult. And I don't think I could do it long term. So, and it's funny because one of the things that if you don't have any, if you have never known anybody who's done keto or Atkins or anything like that, what I can tell you is that every one of them is like dying to cheat, or that sometimes they'll have these like they'll go on vacation and they'll cheat, and so maybe they'll then come back from vacation and then they do like a 24-hour fast and then exercise a bunch to get back into ketosis. So there's all this crazy stuff that's going on out there, and it's I don't know, like it's kind of it is crazy. I mean, it's like rather than trying to do something long-term sustainable, you're trying to basically load up in one area and like deprive yourself in a lot of ways. And most people can find that they don't feel deprived in a vegan diet. And I think what happens is if you do the ketosis thing and you get kind of carb crazy, or, like even the desire to eat like rice and potatoes becomes really, really strong. So, if you're interested in looking more about it, there are definitely people out there. There's somebody called Meat Free Keto on Instagram, has a lot of low carb recipe ideas. I think Lindsay and I would endorse, if you wanted to be a little more low carb, I think we would endorse like take out the sugars, so like no chocolate, no breads, nothing that has flour in it, and just focus on fruits and vegetables and all that stuff. And, instead of, putting things like, so instead of like maybe doing wraps, maybe you just do, potatoes, and you take the stuff that you would put in the wrap and you put it on top of the potatoes and the rice. So, I think one of the things that we would typically start to recommend is if you feel like you need to reduce the inflammation, is that you definitely stay away from sugars and just those refined carbohydrates. I mean, flour is absolutely 100% a processed food. And, we're always trying to encourage everyone to eat as little or as limited processed foods as possible. But I think, you got to do what works for you. And, maybe in your first couple of years, it's too much to ask to like really restrict, the carbohydrates that you might take. One of the things that they also brought up in this article that I think is really interesting is they said that like, now, so this was, if you're a woman suffering from PCOS, and in the UK, this study that they're referencing, about 25% of women in the UK have PCOS, and they actually say reducing inflammation, is a big, like getting sugar and flours out of your diet is one of the ways that you can reduce inflammation. And I've actually, during my 6-week process, I really noticed that I didn't have as much of these like fluctuations from salt, like flour and stuff like that. And I really do think it had to do with the fact that I wasn't consuming bread, and then it was causing inflammation. Even though it was in stuff that I don't really feel it. Like for me, I don't get it in my feed or anything like that. So, yeah, and Jacqueline said in the comment, yeah, like the slimming option. Exactly. So yeah, we already have a lot of these tools in like Meal Mentor and our different things. So, and thank you, Dana. She said, exactly. Is it sustainable? And I completely agree. We don't think that the keto diet is very sustainable. I think it could be something you could do for a week. Mostly, kind of a reset, a detox, that kind of thing. I think it's an interesting thing to do, to play a little bit with, longer fasts, kind of removing certain things out of your diet. Like I really have always been like somebody who's really obsessed with bread. So, and so I will tell you, if anybody's just watching and wanting to look, so Lindsay did a review on the 4-hour vegan body diet. Now this was way back in 2010 when, this kind of or not an internet celebrity. I guess that's what the way to refer to Tim Ferriss wrote a book called The 4-Hour Body. A lot of people know him for the 4-Hour Work Week. I just thought, and he basically he even created his own version of the paleo diet, and he called it slow carb. So yeah. Yeah. And say Dana says, I'm a practicing nurse anesthesiast, and I see patients go off these diets and they quickly gain the weight back. Yeah, so totally. It's totally a yo-yo thing. And I've got a good friend of mine who does it regularly. And, I see he's pretty good when he's on it, but whenever he travels, it's hard not to be on the keto. Lindsay also wrote about the paleo vegan or vegan paleo diet back in 2012 or 2010 as well. And I'll link all these up in the video after it's over with. But I feel like I've beaten the vegan paleo thing to death, or the vegan keto thing. I keep interchanging them because they're so similar. This I think is really fun. A study that was, this is another article published by plantbasednews.org. Going vegan is the new men's midlife crisis, a study claims. Now this like, I'm not typically going to take things that have a really small sample and just like kind of trumpet them out, because how interesting is a study about 100 people or whatever. And so let me just quickly read this. And so the study of 3,000 people by the Bupta Health Clinics says hitting the start of a new decade like 40 or 50 can drive people into crisis, inspiring them to make big health changes like ditching alcohol, signing up for sporting events, or going for a full health, I guess, I'm not sure, there's some abbreviation, MOT. Through 25% relapse within 12 months, around 5% maintain the change for eight or more years. Nearly a quarter, 24% of that 3,000 respondents of this Bupta survey reacted to their midlife crisis by going vegan. It's really, really funny. I just couldn't, whenever I saw that, I was like 24% of 3,000. So I'm pretty sure this study was done in the UK. And it seems like the UK really is trending hard on this. I don't pay that much attention to it. And this plant-based news site is actually, I think they're based out of the UK. So I thought that was really, really fascinating. 24% of the men of that 3,000 people went vegan as a midlife crisis thing. That's really interesting. I just turned 40 back in August. So I just thought it really jumped out at me, because it's like weird. It's like you don't really start worrying about a midlife crisis when you're in your 30s, but once you're like 40, you start like going, So it's an interesting little article. I'll link up to it in the notes after the video. And so the last thing I was going to talk about is should we tax meat? And it's interesting, tangentially, there's New York City tried to tax sodas, and there's definitely been different places that have tried to tax soda and stuff like that. And it's interesting because there's other environmental taxes, and like carbon taxes have shown to be actually really effective. And so here's another, now this is an article by the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, also known as PCRM. And so I'm just going to read a little segment out of this because I think it's better for me to give it in their words sometimes. So meat taxes global health. So why not tax meat? New research shows that a tax on red and processed meat, such as hot dogs, bacon, deli meat, could save millions of lives and billions of dollars in healthcare costs. Researchers from the University of Oxford estimated that in 2020, global meat consumption will result in $285 billion in healthcare costs and 2.4 million deaths from heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and colorectal cancer. But a global tax on meat could prevent 220,000 deaths and decrease healthcare costs by $41 billion and help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It's interesting. So it's like let's see. I'm kind of curious because I like doing math on stuff like this. So 220,000 out of that 2.4 million that they've said. So it's interesting. So that's saving about 9% of the lives. If I thought that was interesting. You can literally save 9% of that 2.4 million deaths annually by taxing meat, making it more expensive. So I thought that was interesting. I think it would be highly unlikely, I think, for us to pick out one particular kind of food item and apply like a tax to it. I think it's possible. I mean, we've certainly taxed cigarettes, and but like I think the difference with cigarettes is that like society had just really gotten anti-smoking, right? And so there was just this massive push to like make it more expensive. It was a good way to like tax something that was like a vice, and then it also fills your county and city and state tax coffers to help pay for things. So why wouldn't you tax cigarettes to pay for the bridge? Because it's kind of a like I said, it's a cigarettes are not something that you need to live for. So I think it would be a very, very difficult thing to do on meat. I mean, I think it's funny because I try to like not get invested in something that I think is practically like impossible, at least today, from today's view, and maybe in the next 10-year horizon. I think today it's practically impossible for this to ever happen. So I think it's an interesting topic. And it's interesting that somebody would fund a study that did that kind of research. And maybe like I said, there was another reference to the UK, University of Oxford did that study. So saved 9% of people globally. So I think that's interesting. So it's funny because they said, one of the quotes in here, they said, a meat tax is certainly a step in the right direction, but eliminating processed meats from hospitals, schools, and other public institutions could save even more lives. Healthcare professionals and educators agree. I think that's more practical, is making it, I don't know, what's the phrase I'm looking for? I don't know, like socially unacceptable to have, like highly processed foods and especially processed meats in those organizations. I think you're already seeing a backlash. And so, and to lead right into that, these are well-written articles. So that, like I said, this is an article from PCRM. I'm going to post the link at the end, but they said at the beginning of the school year, the Santa Barbara Unified School District in California became the first school district in the United States to remove processed meats from lunch menus. Other districts may soon follow Santa Barbara's lead. Earlier this year, members of the New York City Council introduced legislation that would remove processed city meats from schools and lunches. I think this is the way that you do a lot of this stuff. I mean, I think there's already definitely been backlashes of having soda machines and vending machines that were just full of stuff. I mean, I'll go ahead and be a little vulnerable right now about like my own part in this. I please don't anybody blame my parents for this, but my mom would give me lunch money, and so whenever I'd go to school, I don't know, I think I'd have $2 or something like that. This is the good old like early 90s, like 1990, and I can remember I would buy like a soda and like maybe one or two Little Debbies, and like that would be my lunch. Maybe I had brought some food with me, but like that's how terrible, and like that stuff was available. Like I mean, we're talking like I forget what they're like, zebra cakes and like fudge rounds and like what were the peanut butter, like it was like a peanut butter like crunchy stick, and that was literally my lunch. It's oh man, I mean, I can't even imagine how that contributed to like my ability to pay attention in class and my ability to like not be grumpy from from having to sit in school, and because nowadays whenever if I eat something that's got sugar in it, the crash is so much more prevalent. So I just think it's really interesting. We had some other people say hello. I want to say hello to Shara. She said that I guess Good Morning America did a segment where the doctor told her to remove all the sugar from her diet, and she eliminated it, and she lost 40 pounds in 3 weeks. Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I definitely feel like I get some inflammation. I think it affects Lindsay way more than it does me. Like even on plane flights, her feet will be, you don't see the bones in her foot as easily. She like literally gets swollen. I mean, I just don't think it affects me as bad, but I definitely see how it affects other people. Oh, 3 months, not 3 weeks. Yeah. I was like, yeah, there you go. Thank you, Shara, for that clarification. Hi, Robert. Thanks for joining us. And if you guys have enjoyed any of this so far, please like and thumbs up and make sure we see other people can see this video. All right. So thanks for being with me so far on this show. So that's kind of me wrapping up the topics I wanted to talk about. I'll link to all of these things. If you guys really love, information about diet and lifestyle in the plant-based vegan community, if you haven't yet listened to all the episodes or have never even heard of the Shortcut to Slim podcast, Lindsay has 2 full seasons. I think there's like 22 episodes that are just jam packed with tons of really interesting research and information. And she gives her interpretation of all of this stuff. I mean, I think at one point we researched it, and that she had spent, I don't know, it was over 30, 40, 50 books, and it was hundreds and hundreds of dollars of stuff that she had read. And, I mean, to tell you the quality of the Shortcut to Slim podcast, there's 129 ratings and it's 4.5 stars. People love the podcast. So if you haven't downloaded it, please do now. And the way you can find the podcast, I'm going to add it in the show notes, but you can also just search for Shortcut to Slim podcast, or you go to happyherbivore.com and click the link to the podcast and get to listening. So I've got like all these like little windows in the way as I'm trying to read stuff. I have to organize myself. I'm kind of a all over the place kind of guy. So the more I organize myself, the more I stay on task. All right, here's my final ask, everyone. So my intention is this new Happy Herbivore Meal Mentor vegan plant-based talk show. We're going to have a guest on every week. It's part of the reason why I'm doing the talk show, and I'm probably not going to do as many customer interviews anymore, is because we had a really, really hard time getting customers to volunteer. So who would you want to see from the plant-based vegan community to be on this show? Like, just leave a comment. Tell me who you'd like to see on the show. We can definitely work on the big heavy names, but I'm also interested in like maybe people that are not as well known. I intend to talk to many different doctors. I want to talk to people that run other websites, different organizations. Every time I find like a neat little tool, like, so there's actually, it's not necessarily a vegan plant-based, it's not necessarily a vegan plant-based business, but I'd love to talk to these guys. So it's a nonprofit organization, and they run the seasonal food guide. So it's just a free app, but it just helps you figure out like what's seasonal right now. And so this is something that makes it easier for us to, to figure out what's seasonal. And so, we will occasionally use this to kind of figure out what's coming. Cause we're working on meal plans months in advance. And so sometimes we're just like trying to make it to where, we include ingredients that are commonly available, seasonally available, and that are delicious and people will enjoy eating. So, there we go. Anthony, our first recommendation by Sylvia. Thank you, Sylvia. Anthony Salas. I'm not sure who that is, but I will definitely Google and search him up. Shara asked, is the podcast on Stitcher? And I don't know. I can look, but I don't know. Like we're distributed through iTunes. We're distributed through the Google Play Store. If you actually go to the Happy Herbivore website and click on podcasts, there's a bunch of links there to those different stores. And we'll get you put in the right place. And I will look up and answer your question, Shara, about Stitcher. So I guess my final ask is, like I said, if you'd have somebody you'd like to see on the show, please, include their name below. And the great thing is, if you're watching this not live, you can still add that question on there, and I will get to them. I will definitely reach out. So thank you for listening today. And if you're trying to figure out how to plan your food for the week and you need some help with vegan or plant-based recipes, please go to, getmealplans.com and sign up for a 7-day free trial. And, no commitment. We don't charge you. We just ask for a credit card. This has been used by tens of thousands of customers. We've got, lots of great tools and lots of great recipes there to make your planning your recipes each week easier. So thanks again, and I'll see you soon.